Thank you so much for stopping by my channel, 521 Investments. As I said in my first video, I have learned that building wealth is just like building a dream house. But I need that dream house built on a good foundation. Wealth building must be built on a good foundation. And what that foundation does, it establishes your why. Why do I want to build wealth? What is the purpose for me building wealth? Just as building a house in the natural, there's always basic materials, whether it's concrete or whatever, wood, steel that goes in that house or that building. So building wealth always has basic materials. And the materials of building wealth are my income, my expense, my debt, and my cash flow. I say that again. The basic materials of building wealth are my income, my expense, my debt, and my cash flow. I must have a good understanding of those four things. I can't play around with those things, because if I play around with my income, my expense, my debt, and my cash flow, it can affect my foundation of the building, the structure, the house what I'm trying to build. My income deals with what's coming in. I must know what's coming in. How much money I got coming in, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. I must know what's coming in. My expenses, my utilities, my rent, my food. What are the basics that I need to survive? Next, it's my debt. Whether I have a mortgage, whether I have good debt, bad debt, I must have knowledge of that if I want to build that dream house. And the most important one of all, I must understand my cash flow. How much do I have left over when I pay my expenses, I pay on my debt, and how much do I have left to build this foundation? Think about that for a minute. Do you know your correct cash flow? Do you know your cash flow? One time in my life, I care less about cash flow. All I wanted to know is how much money I was making and how much money I was going to spend. I didn't care anything about my expenses, and I didn't care anything about debt. All I was concerned about is what I made and what I was spending. But now I have learned that building wealth, I must know my income, I must know my expense, I must know my debt, and I must know my cash flow. Now, you may be at a stage in your life where your cash flow is positive, and that's good. Or you might be in a state where your cash flow is negative every month. And I know I was there for months at a time. My cash flow was in the negative. And I'm going to tell you why. As I mentioned in my first video, some things you know that you don't know. I say that again. Some things you know that you don't know. And I didn't know anything about my income, my expenses, my debt, and my cash flow. To be honest, I didn't really care. The only thing I cared about was living for the weekend. I say it again, the only thing I cared about was living for the weekend. But I must understand, to be financially free, I have to master those things. Most of our financial stress can be found in those four fundamental steps. Think about that again. That's a bold statement. Most of our financial stress can be found in those four fundamental steps that I cannot ignore. I must understand them. I can't choose to ignore them. They are too important. So, the first thing you and I must always do is take an assessment. Take an assessment this week or this month, the month of July, at the time of this recording. Take an assessment and be honest with yourself and say, whoa, things are not looking good. I'm in the negative. Or I'm in the positive and things are looking good, but I wanted to get better. So take an assessment. Now, I want to share something with you. There is a biblical scripture that supports this about taking an assessment. And it goes as this. And God answered, write this. Write what you see. Write it out in big block letters so that it can be read on the run. So, I have to write it down. And God said, write it down. To get your financial house in order, you have to write it down. You have to write it down, just like a blueprint. You got to write it down. And you got to be honest. What you see, whether it's in the negative or in the positive, God said, write it down so that it can be read on the run. And that's found in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, and verse 2. So, as we build our financial house, let's get our foundation in order. Let's understand our income, our expense, our debt, and our cash flow. And I will be going more in depth on the coming videos on these subjects. Please consider to subscribe to my channel and like the video. Until we meet again, peace.